Good morning. This is Ron. It is Wednesday, May the 8th. Welcome to Storytime. Okay, so the thing that I was thinking about today and over the past couple of days was about the opioid crisis, because that's been a big deal in the news recently, and seems to be something that is affecting Americans coast to coast. There's a lot of people that are um, hooked on various opioids, most notably heroin. I saw a um, Facebook video, and somebody had gone into a store, like a 7-Eleven type store, convenience store, and there was two ladies behind the counter that were supposed to be ringing up their purchases, and somebody was using their cell phone to film these two ladies as they were literally asleep on their feet. One of them had her head tilted slightly back and her mouth wide open. And to me, it looked as though, and I think what was suggested is that they were high on something. They may have been high on heroin, they may have been higher on some kind of pills, but they were high. And somebody said something to them, and then they sort of snap out of it, and then very slowly start, oh, okay, and picking up where they left off, trying to get get the purchases rang up and get the customers on their way. And I think that, again, it looked to me opioid-ish because I remember there was a picture of a couple that was in their car. They'd pulled over to the side of the road. I think the engine was still running, and they were in the same state. They were completely slack. One or both of them had their mouth wide open, head thrown back, and they had their baby child in the back seat. And turned out they were high on heroin, and they were trying to take their child somewhere. And I guess they got too drowsy and at least had the wherewithal to be able to pull the vehicle over. But they looked exactly, they had the same slack expression and slack demeanor. I'm surprised that the ladies in the Facebook video were able to stand. And maybe they had their knees locked or something like that, because it was just, it was really pathetic. And I had written on the Facebook page, I said, and these are older women, they should know better. And the somebody wrote back and said, "Oh, well, but don't you know, or don't you realize?" Started scolding me. It's a disease. So what? That doesn't mean anything. Doesn't prove anything. My point still stands. They should have known better. But as far as the opioid crisis is concerned overall, it occurs to me the one thing that I haven't heard anyone else talk about, not Rush, not Sean, nobody talk about, is the link between the legalization of recreational marijuana and the explosion of heroin and other opioid use. Because if you think about it, what kind of a cultural signal does the legalization of the recreational use of marijuana by, I think, 6 states send to Americans? What kind of a cultural signal does it send in terms of whether or not it's a good idea to go out and experiment with recreational drug use? It seems that it sends the message of uh, complacency and of license, that the country is basically giving the green light to everyone else in the country to go ahead and get as high as you want, as often as you want, knock yourself out. And but like I said, I've not heard anybody else or make this connection. And it's been an old idea that the reason that we wanted to keep marijuana illegal was because it was considered a gateway drug. But I don't think it's so much necessarily a gateway in this particular case. I don't know that any of these people started smoking marijuana at first, but again, that is just a cultural signal. Hey, guess what, folks? Forget about the taboos on using illegal drugs. Have at it. Do whatever you want. It's getting to a point of cultural anarchy. So, and it may very well be that that what's going to need that the solution would be to recriminalize marijuana, put marijuana back in. And one of the things that the federal government could do, because it's still considered a whatever schedule drug and is illegal for recreational use, is have the federal government step in and start prosecuting, getting tough, going into whatever states where it's supposedly legal, and make federal government prosecutions and remind people, no, it's not okay to get as high as you want as often as you want. It's no good. So, and part of the reason I thought about that is that there's a proliferation here in California, particularly in Southern California, of these, because we have a lot of homeless, an explosion of homeless people in Southern California and in San Francisco for that matter, but particularly in Southern California. And along with it has been a proliferation of recovery houses, people where buildings spring up and particularly the beach communities. And the idea is they advertise throughout the United States, hey, you need to recover from opioid abuse, you need to recover from heroin addiction. We have the solution for you. Come on out to California, have your insurance pay for it, and we'll get you cleaned up. So then they come out. If the insurance runs out before they're done with the program, then of course they're cut loose. They just show them the door. Have a nice life. Well, if they're not quite done with the program, then more than likely they're going to start using again right away. And now they're in a situation where they have no job, they have no place to live, and so they just go and create various encampments, tent cities, and whatnot, and go ahead and use again. And so that's where we're ending up, apparently, where we're ending up with a whole lot of more homeless and drug addiction problems than we started with. So when I come back, it is going to be time for Hillsdale College, and we're going to continue with part 3 of the liberals and compassion. Okay, I'm back, and again, this is going to be part 3 of the case against liberal compassion. What he should have done with the title of this is call it the case against liberal so-called compassion, or put the word compassion in quotes. Because again, throughout this article, I've noted that it is the Republicans' fault on these particular issues because the Republicans concede the point over and over and over again. They concede the fact that the liberals are compassionate. They concede the fact that these folks are liberal in the first place, and they concede just about anything and everything else. And then they can't understand why the Republican Party is held in such low esteem in various places around the country. And so my thing is, quit doing it. Quit giving the game away. Fight them for it. Instead of calling them progressives, call them Crowleyists, which is exactly what they are. And don't concede the fact that they're compassionate. There's very little, if anything, that is compassionate about the Democrat Party today. But here we go. We're continuing on now with the article. The clear implication that many liberals are not especially troubled if government dollars that could help poor people are squandered strikes me as true, interesting, and important. Given that liberals are people who, 1, have built a welfare state that is now the biggest thing government does in America, and 2, want to regard themselves and be regarded by others as compassionate empathizers determined to alleviate suffering, it should follow that nothing would preoccupy them more than making sure that the welfare state machinery is functioning at maximum efficiency. when it isn't, after all. The sacred mission of alleviating preventable suffering is inevitably degraded. In fact, however, liberals do not seem all that concerned about whether the machine they built and want to keep expanding is running well. For inflation-adjusted per capita federal welfare state spending to increase by 254% from 1977 to 2013 without a correspondingly dramatic reduction in poverty. And for liberals to react to this phenomenon by taking the position that our welfare state's only real defect is that it is insufficiently generous rather than insufficiently effective suggests a basic problem. To take a recent vivid example, the Obama administration had 3.5 years from the signing of the Affordable Care Act to the launch of the healthcare.gov website. It's hard to reconcile the latter debacle with the image of liberals lying awake at night, tormented by the thought of that the government should be doing more to reduce suffering. A sympathetic columnist, E.J. Dionne, wrote of the website's crash and burn debut. Quote, "There's a lesson here that liberals apparently need to learn over and over. Good intentions without proper administration can undermine even the most noble of goals." Unquote. That such an elementary lesson is one liberals need to learn over and over suggests a fundamental defect in liberalism. However, something worse than careless or inept implementation of liberal policies. That defect, I came to think, can be explained as follows. The problem with liberalism may be that no one knows how to get the government to do the benevolent things liberals want it to do. Or it may be, at least in some cases, that it just isn't possible for the government to bring about what liberals want it to accomplish. As the leading writers in the public interest began demonstrating almost 50 years ago, the intended beneficial consequences of social policies are routinely overwhelmed by unintended harmful consequences they trigger. It may also be, as conservatives have long argued, that achieving liberal goals, no matter how humane they sound, requires kinds and degrees of government coercion fundamentally incompatible with a government created to secure citizens' inalienable rights and deriving its just powers from the consent of the governed. I don't reject any of those possibilities or deny the evidence and logic adduced in support of each, but my assessment of how the liberal project has been justified in words and rendered in deeds leads me to a different explanation for why, under the auspices of liberal government, things have a way of turning out so badly. I conclude that the machinery created by the politics of kindness doesn't work very well in the sense of being economical, adaptable, and above all, effective. Because the liberals who build, operate, defend, and seek to expand this machine don't really care whether it works very well and are, on balance, happier when it fails than when it succeeds. And so I'm going to leave this article there, and we'll end up having to do a part 4. But one of the things that he doesn't get, that again Republicans seem to fail to understand routinely, is the goals of the left. The goal of the left is not to create a welfare state or to lift up the poor. The whole idea from the left is that we wouldn't have poor if we had a socialist paradise. Okay, so it doesn't matter to them. They don't care whether they're wasting a lot of money. As a matter of fact, maybe all the better. Whatever it is that's going to bring the socialist revolution as fast as possible is what's best for the entire world. Because then, theoretically, when the socialist paradise occurs, again, nobody's poor, nobody's addicted to drugs, nobody has any problems whatsoever because capitalism has been swept from the face of the earth. And Republicans are stupid not to remember this and to understand how that plays into Democrat policies. Okay, so when we come back, it's going to be a little bit of another clip from Rush Limbaugh. Okay, so I'm back, and this is going to be a clip again from Rush Limbaugh, and it's called Uber Leftist Perps.
I'm just stunned at the number of perps here who actually are highly acclaimed, supposedly greatly achieved and accomplished left-wing uber leftists. All of the big names, with Schneiderman being the most recent, are uber leftists. Every time we get one of these stories, the perp is an accomplished, highly achieved, and highly lauded uber left-wing radical. What explains this? It's more than just hypocrisy.
Okay, so he goes right away. This is again where liberal or socialists are dominating our culture. Everything now needs to be psychoanalyzed. Everything that happens there's a why question to it. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? And what follows is psychoanalysis. In other words, what's the psychology behind the decision? And that's what he's trying to get to here. Why is it that there are so many uber leftists, et cetera, and he's about to psychoanalyze the whole situation, and it isn't important. He's wasting time. What's important is what these uber leftists are doing right or wrong? In this particular case, he's talking about this is prompted by the revelation that the New York State Attorney General was engaged in some rather unsavory personal behavior with women. He was slapping them around, beating them, and he was just absolutely horrible. And he's since gone ahead and resigned, which surprises me. I'm surprised anytime a socialist goes ahead and resigns. But anyhow, so he's Mr. Uber leftist. One of the other things that Rush Limbaugh isn't doing, besides understanding that it's not an issue of psychology, but is an issue of right and wrong, is making the important point and the distinction between being a Republican, being a conservative, and being a Democrat socialist. And that this is an opportunity for Mr. Limbaugh to go ahead and proselytize, if you will, and help to get young voters, people that are about to vote perhaps for the very first time, to become Republicans and conservatives. And the way he can do this is by saying, yes, because the real reason why there's so many ultra left people and Democrats that are getting into trouble is because the Democrat Party simply has no standards when you get right down to it. The Republicans and the conservatives are supposed to be the parties and the party and the wing of the party that is about standards and having standards. And we have standards because we're realistic. We know that there's limits. The reality is fundamentally about limits. And so is knowledge, and so is ethics. That fundamentally ethics and ethical decisions are about how far is it you're willing to go to get your goals? What limits have you set on yourself? How far? Where's the point where you say, no, I'm not going to cross that line? There was a line in the Rockford Files in which the main character, Jim Rockford, was asked by a woman, is there anything you won't do for money? And he says, well, I won't kill for it, and I won't marry for it. Other than that, I'm open to just about anything. So he's demonstrating ethics. There is a boundary. There is a point in which he will not cross. He's not going to marry or murder for money. So, with the Democrats and the left, there is no such thing. There are no limits. There is no standard by which the party can judge any of its members. So that's why they end up with the, if you will, uber perps. And Rush Limbaugh should be saying to prospective voters, this is why you should be voting conservative. This is why you should be voting Republican. You should be active in the Republican Party. You should be active as a conservative because we are the better party. We're better than the Democrats. We are morally, ethically superior because the Democrats don't acknowledge morality in the first place. They deny universal rights and wrongs. And this is where the chickens come home to roost for the Democrat Party. When you deny that there are any universal rights and wrongs, What a surprise when your party is populated by perpetrators. Okay, so when I come back, it's going to be the New York City cab driver's joke book. Okay, so the New York City cab driver's joke book by Jim Peach. A man is showing off his new rifle to his friend. Okay, so we'll try again. I just want to make sure I haven't read it before. A man is showing off his new rifle to his friend. He's especially proud of the fact that his rifle is equipped with the latest model high-powered sight. Just look through that sight, he says to his friend. You can see over 300 yards. Go ahead, look out the window and scan those rooftops way over there. So his friend looks through the sight and suddenly he lowers the rifle. Oh no, he says. What's the matter? Asks the man. I just saw, says a friend, swallowing hard, my wife making love to a man on that roof over there. With that, he hands the gun back to the other man. Here, he says, I want you to shoot them for me. I can't do that, says the first man. Look, says a friend, I don't know anything about guns. I can't shoot at all. Come on, you're my best friend. You gotta do this for me. Well, all right, says the man. Having made that difficult decision, he begins to take aim. The friend says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to kill them both. Shoot him in the balls and her in the face. Holy cow, says the first man, peering through the sight and taking aim. I think I can get this one in one shot. I often get people in my cab who have just come from a movie or a show and many times overhear their comments and personal reviews. On one occasion, however, a man and a woman were talking about an audience member that were talking more about an audience member than about the dramatic Broadway show they'd just seen. Wasn't that guy in front of us annoying, said the woman, the way he was coughing and dropping coins on the floor every time he shifted in his seat? And always, of course, during the quiet moments of the show. You know, I counted 17 coughs in the second act alone. Yeah, I know, said the man, and I counted $1.85 and change. Men and a woman are about to make love, and the woman is getting very excited. Put your finger in, she whispers. So he does. Put another finger in, she says as her excitement heightens. So he does this, and she gets even more excited. Put your hand in, she says. My hand? Yes, she says, your hand, put it in. So he puts his whole hand in, and she's going crazy. Put your other hand in, she moans. My other hand? He gulps. Yes, yes, do it, she screams, barely able to contain herself. Now, she cries, clap. I can't, says the man. She looks at him and says, tight, huh? What do you get when you cross a computer and a Jewish American princess? A system that won't go down. All right, and that about wraps up this episode of Story Time. And until tomorrow, thank you very much for joining me, and have a great day.